the Arena Direct Aetherdrift Sealed Collector. That's right, ladies and gents. Sealed Collector Booster event is queuing up here very shortly. By the time you see this, it's probably almost live. We'll be jumping into it this weekend and having some content through next week. I'm going to give this quite a few runs, probably. Hopefully we can have some success. My goal is to try to win 2 collector booster boxes of Aetherdrift. We'll see if we have any success with doing that. If you're not familiar very quickly with the event, it's first to 6 wins. 6 wins gets you a single Aetherdrift collector booster box. If you played any of the 2 previous, you were in store for 2 play boosters, so they've kind of upped the ante, but generally the prize value is just about the same, give or take a little bit. I actually think the 2 play booster box is probably a little bit more worthwhile, but I do love ripping some collector boosters if you're a fan of the channel. Anyways, so it's first to 6 wins. If you make it to 5 wins, you get your gems back. It's a very expensive event. I'm covering it up at 5,000 gems, or first to 2 losses. Okay, so it's going to be sealed. You keep the cards very much like a traditional sealed. You build a deck, limited event, and then you really just got to draw well. You have to play pretty well in addition to that, but we have had some success. We have had some success in the recent versions of this, so I'm very, very excited. What I wanted to do today was to talk about a handful of cards that I'm going to be keeping an eye out for in each of the colors to help kind of craft and build a sealed deck. Now, you may play a bunch of Arena, or you may not, and that's okay too, and you may be interested in jumping into this event. Sealed has a slight variation when it comes to your card pool and some of the things that you should be looking out for. Now, the standard cards that you would expect, the really, really good, high quality win rares and mythics are certainly going to help to craft what you want to build. But in this video, I want to focus on a handful of commons and uncommons that are performing quite well in Sealed to give you a little bit of a leg up, hopefully, when you jump into this event this weekend or are looking at sealed events here on MTG Arena in the future. Let's jump over and let's chat about some uncommons. Okay, let's first start with white. Now, I have had the opportunity over the last couple, week and a half, 2 weeks that the set has been out. I have jumped in quite a bit of sealed. I've really been kind of grinding in preparation for this event. I would say in many instances, a lot of the format is open. There are certainly some primary colors. Green feels very, very strong. Blue has some really good tempo plays, but there is also I've had a lot of success with a lot of different versions and formats of the cards. In Sealed, you really have to play to the strength of what you have available to you. It is important to note that this is very much a grindier format. So having the opportunity with your cards to do late game things, the exhaust ability ends up being quite good. Mounts and vehicles can be solid when built correctly, but having the opportunity to dump mana into those things late into the game and get some value is certainly something that you should be looking for. But let me jump into and just comment on a handful of cards here that I do think are things to kind of keep in mind and maybe can be key indicators for where you want to build your deck. Now, I should also say that the standard limited deck building ideas still persist here. You want a solid curve. You definitely want some interaction. That's probably one of the big tips I would give up front. Interaction, especially interaction in the mid to late game, being able to kind of 2-for-1 an opponent while they've spent a bunch of mana on an exhaust ability to then remove that creature and then maybe interrupt that ability is absolutely backbreaking in many instances. Now, you can recover from that if you're on the opposing side, but keep in mind for that, you've really got to pay attention to open mana, and you have to make sure that you're paying attention and you're building your deck in the colors that's going to give you the best opportunity to have that interaction. That's where I think blue feels a little weaker than normally it would, just because the tempo plays are not as impactful, because the format's a lot more grindy. The games go a lot longer. Something like a bounce off that normally be a great tempo play ends up not being quite as good, because a lot of times you're going to see that card again, or unless you can kill them on the spot with that tempo play, you're probably not getting as much value. And Bouncing something that has been exhausted is also just not great, because usually you're giving them that exhaust ability back again. So couple of tips up front to consider. I want to jump in and let's talk about a couple of cards that have performed very, very well. I'm going to use 17 lands as well for some statistics to help me out with this, and then just a couple of my personal thoughts and opinions. Let's start with some uncommons here. Glory Heath Lynx is actually one of the best and sitting currently at the best for top white uncommons. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. 2/3 lifelink for 2, already good enough. The fact that you can saddle this up, you can use this to get a little bit of ramp going as well, is really, really fantastic. Helps you filter out some of those lands, especially early on. This dropping on turn 2 can be quite impactful. So keep an eye out for this. If you're going to end up going into white, you probably will be doing some type of mount / vehicle-esque synergies as well as artifacts. So things to consider. This is one of the better ones out there and performing quite well up at the top. Interestingly enough, right next to it, Sundial Dawn Tyrant is also up there. Solid 3/3 body for 2, and it should be noted that the artifact creature component of Sundial is actually quite impactful in the format. Again, white is really, really good at doing the artifact thing. It can reduce, it has quite a few cards that will play off the amount of artifacts that you have. So it is a really good synergy. This is a solid creature, vanilla creature, should be noted, but solid vanilla creature for 2 with a good 3/3 body that can be pretty impactful. I'm going to just give an honorable mention to Detention Chariot. Great card. It can cycle. It can really be a good tempo play. You do have to be careful. It's very easy to destroy artifacts in this format. Again, depending on what colors you're playing across from. So you can kind of get tempoed back. So just kind of keep in mind what you're exiling. But it is target artifact or creature. So that can be a vehicle. That can be an impactful artifact like Aether Siphon or Monument of Endurance or something like that, or a creature that can get out of the way for you. So little special note there. 2 cards that I've actually really, really enjoyed. Gallant Strike is actually a very solid removal spell, in my opinion. 2 mana, instant, toughness 4 or greater. There's a lot of exhaust creatures that are going to pump their toughness up, especially in green and in blue. This actually hits and can be one of those great removal spells to kind of get some, pseudo 2-for-1, 1.5, if you will, being able to remove a creature while also sucking up some mana if you're using it on something that has been exhausted. This is also great for a lot of the multicolored vehicles because they can have pretty high toughness. So this is a great thing. You can also cycle this if you need something in a pinch. So that is something to also consider. Really enjoy Gallant Strike here. The other one that if you are going to be doing the vehicles or the mounts thing, the Armory has performed phenomenally for me. I don't think statistically it's doing that well. We'll take a quick scroll here. Yeah, Armory's pretty low, to be honest with you, and I'm not surprised by that. This takes a very, very specific deck for this to function well. But I am telling you, if you have some mounts and you have some vehicles, being able to queue that vehicle up, have it have vigilance, to be able to attack, have the additional boost, because all of your creatures get +0, +1, absolutely fantastic. It also counts if you're doing any kind of artifact synergies. So that's something to kind of consider. If you're going to be in white vehicles / artifacts, if you can reduce this cost as well, this thing is absolutely fantastic and is going to help you to take some of your bigger mounts, some of your more impactful creatures, and really get them in for some solid damage. I have had the opportunity to put Armory out there and then also Unswerving Sloth, queuing this up, giving it indestructible every turn, and attacking. That is a pretty hard thing to deal with, especially when you turn it into a 5/6. One other little special note I'll give just for all of the colors across the board is I actually have really enjoyed these road pilot lands. They've been really good. In a pinch, this can give you a good just instant speed, or sorcery speed blocker, set you up with some blocks, and if you are doing the vehicle or the mount thing, can be something to help you really get some power and crew up some of the tougher to crew vehicles. So I'm not saying this is an absolute drop in, you definitely want to have some mounts or some vehicles if you can take advantage of that. But if you're a little bit lower on the creature side and looking for something, these are usually pretty solid lands to consider. Now, let's take a look at blue. There's two cards I want to specifically talk about that have just performed for me fantastically and are also very high up on the list. Stock Up is the second card. This is a fantastic card. It's everything that blue wants to do. It's giving you the opportunity to look at 5 cards of your library. You get to pick 2 of those 5 and put them into your hand. So early on, you can craft if you need some lands or some different colors, or you need some interaction or some creatures. 5 cards gives you the opportunity to find a lot of that, and the rest go on the bottom of your library. That's an important note, so you're not pitching them to the graveyard. It is a 3-mana sorcery speed spell, but on turn 3 or on turn 4, if you're not being pressured, this can absolutely be great. And late in the game, this is fantastic to help you fill up your hand, find the answers that you need, and hopefully get some tempo going. So if you see a Stock Up or 2 in your sealed pool for Aetherdrift this weekend, consider that, in addition to maybe a handful of other spells and creatures to look out for. And blue could be a pretty strong color for you as well. Little hint here, I do like Transit Mage. This card's performed pretty well. You do have to have the synergies of 4 or 5 artifacts, but again, so many of those, there's so many vehicle options. Blue really can help you to find that stuff. This card gets you that extra value by essentially pulling that card into your hand. I have had a lot of success with like the Gear Hulks, for instance. Being able to turn 3 Transit Mage, turn 4 Gear Hulk can be a very, very, very good sequence if you have the mana set up to be able to support that. And then last but not least, I have to talk about here in blue, Spikeshell Harrier. This is the top performing uncommon, I believe, against all uncommons from what I'm looking at really quickly here. The ability to return a creature or vehicle opponent controls to its owner's hand. That opponent's speed is then reduced, and you get a 4/4 body for 5. That's also an artifact creature, is nothing to be upset by. So this can absolutely be one of the biggest tempo plays that blue has available to it, and at that point in the game can be pretty impactful. So if you see a Spikeshell Harrier out there, you should also maybe be considering what can you do with your pool here in blue. Okay, black actually kind of falls off a little bit statistically on 17 lands, but I'm going to talk about a couple of cards that I think are pretty awesome. I like Wretchedal, pretty neat. Good body with the 3/1 for 2. Again, artifact creature synergies here, especially for black, are going to be pretty important. So that is a decent one. It can also help you up with Surveil. Late in the game, not as impactful, but if you are trying to get things into the graveyard, I have had really good luck with doing Reanimation in black-white. Dune Drifter especially was fantastic. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There's a couple other spells. This can be helpful to get you those Surveil triggers and get things into the graveyard if that's what you're looking to do. Carrion Cruiser has actually been is the top performing by just a slight margin uncommon here in black. This is great because this can allow you to return either a creature or a vehicle card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is giving you that recursion we just talked about. In addition, you can also feel a little bit more free to trade with something, especially earlier on if you have this in your hand. Drop it down. It's a 3/2 body, cruise for 1, so very easy to get up and running, and then return something back to your hand. So that is pretty nice. I have had good success with this card, so something to keep an eye out for. Last one, not the last one I'm going to talk about, but one of my favorites is actually Back on Track. This sits a little bit lower in the statistics, but being able to return a creature or vehicle from the graveyard straight to the battlefield for 5 mana and get a pilot, very, very good. So you're essentially getting a nice 2-for-1 here, and hopefully whatever you're returning from your graveyard, creature or vehicle, is going to give you some additional benefits. I've seen this work really, really well, especially in green-black, where a lot of the vehicles have the opportunity to come in, trigger something, kill something, do a life point swing like Dune Beetle. So there's a lot of really good reanimation targets, as well as people are going to be pretty actively getting rid of your bigger threats. a lot of times late in the game, this can bring back one of your big threats and give you the swing that you need maybe to punch in those last few points of damage. So something to keep in mind. Again, recursion and graveyard recursion especially doesn't feel as well put together on first glance, but in the right situation with the right build, Carrion Cruiser back on track, Dune Drifter, a couple other cards, and in white to take a look at can be really, really impactful for you. One of the ones, I think it's an uncommon, is Tune Up. This returns an artifact card from your graveyard and turns a vehicle into an artifact creature. So if you are going the recursion route, can be very, very, very good. This is actually also another great pull. I've put a really nice deck. I think one of the best sealeds I've had so far was actually Black White Reanimate. I think I trophied or maybe got 6 wins with the deck. So very, very good. It's got to come together, but if it can be quite impactful and really good strategy. And then last one I want to mention here in black, Risen Necro Regent. If you can get to max speed, especially if you're doing like the black red thing where speed can be one of those key things that you're looking for, creating a 2/2 at the beginning of each of your end steps is pretty dang good. So consider playing this card. Okay, let's chat about red here. Grease Wrench Goblin is actually the highest performing red card statistically over here on 17 lands. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that it's a 2/1 body for 1. It exhausts for 3 and allows you to put some counters as well as help to shape your hand. A lot of what red wants to do, if you're not as familiar with the format, is not only to exhaust, but also to do that discard and draw component. So if you have a Mako or something else on the battlefield, this can be a very, very good creature. So something to keep a look at. If you are leaning, again, towards the discard piece, especially, this is great, or the exhaust part as well. This is going to give you some value and probably be able to make some pretty good use. And it's up to 2 cards as well. So you can just do a single card discard for this. If you're just carrying an extra land and want to cycle that, you can do that, and this will still get bigger, which is not a bad thing at all. Mako, worthwhile to mention if you can do the discard thing. Blue, red really enjoys doing this a whole lot, so consider that. Road Rage is actually another very, very strong performing red card here. Great removal if you are in that, and it's X is 2 plus the number of mounts and vehicles. Red-white, probably not a super popular color combination, and probably not one of the top, I would say. But again, if built correctly and you are doing a lot of mounts or vehicles in red, which there are quite a few, this can be a fantastic instant removal spell. That is important to note, and can be pretty good. And 2 toughness or 3 toughness is usually 4 toughness is kind of like the key here. If it's over 4 toughness, it's going to be a little bit harder to remove. So if you can get 2 or 3 damage out of this, you're being able to target quite a bit with this. And then lastly, I'll just mention here 2 other cards. I'll place Oblivion. Definitely consider this, mostly just because it's 5 damage to a creature or a planeswalker, which you do have Chandra in the format. But 5 damage for 3, very, very good. Obviously, it's sorcery speed, and then if you are doing the speed thing with this, that can be really helpful, not only to start your engines, but also have you be able to throw 2 damage if that can get you over the finish line if your opponent is not. So something to keep a look out for. And then Dracusar Auxiliary. If you're going to do red and you need a top end, a flying haster that when saddles deals 2 damage to any target, 4/4 dinosaur dragon mount is pretty dang good. So definitely keep an eye out for this one, and you might have some success in red. Okay, let's talk green here. And green is probably the highest concentration of solid uncommons, which is probably in large essence why this is one of the best colors. I'd be very surprised if you jumped into this event this weekend and didn't run into a good portion of decks running green. If you have a decent green sealed pool, you should consider it. Greenbelt Guardian here is going to be one of your best options. 2 mana, 2/2 creature that can give other creatures trample is good enough. You can exhaust this thing for 4 and make it a 5/5. Solid body. this is performing the best out of basically all of the green uncommons. Elvish Refueler is on the list. If you're doing the exhaust thing, can be pretty good. I do like Plow Through as well. For two reasons. One, this is a fight spell if you have it, but also just cleanly answers a vehicle for 1 mana. So somebody playing a big, like 4 or 5 costed vehicle, and you're taking care of it for 1 green, feels pretty good. You're going to enjoy that trade. Fang Druid Summoner, interestingly enough, also doing really, really well. If you have Terrarian here or a couple of the other just no ability, just vanilla creatures, something to consider. And then I have to just mention the Mammoth. This 6/6 drop is absolutely huge, creating a 3/3 and then allows you to saddle up. If you are able to build green in this way and have a nice curve, especially from like 4, 5, and 6 mana up, this is absolutely fantastic. And if you pair that, especially with something like Earth Rumbler, don't sleep on this card either. I have really enjoyed Earth Rumbler, especially by the time you play this, you're probably going to have a few artifacts or creatures in your graveyard. So being able to turn this on, and the fact that it has both Vigilance and Trample, is pretty insane. I don't know that I crew this very often when I've played it. A lot of times I'm just activating that ability. And if you don't care about the things in your graveyard, if you're not doing like a green-black thing, for instance, if you're doing green and another color pairing, this can be really, really solid for you. So a couple of things to keep an eye out for, but green is just fantastic, and you should be considering it. Okay, I want to chat. I want to get over. We've chatted already for quite a few minutes, but I want to talk about some commons. Before I do that really quickly, I'm just going to talk through just a handful of the uncommons in different color pairings. I want to say this. This is going to be completely dependent on your other strong colors. I really do think that these multicolored uncommons are probably less impactful, right? There's some previous formats where you'd want to kind of craft around those a little bit better. There's a few that stand out that I think you can absolutely do that. I would tell you, though, that your base colors here need to be really strong. Splashing, I've seen a lot of 3-color decks, a lot. Be very careful with your splash. There's a lot of multi-pip colored cards in each of the colors, so you have to be really mindful if you're going to be splashing for that to not impact your mana. There's some good fixing options in the set. However, probably not as many. At least I feel like there's not as many as we would, normally see, or as easily accessible. So just something to keep in mind. I talked about Dune Drifter here. I really like this card. This has been really, really good, especially in the white-black shell. Being able to get either a creature or a vehicle back, and it brings it back from the graveyard to the battlefield, is not insignificant. 3/3 body. You could be bringing back something for 1. I have been able to recur. I had again, reanimation deck where I ran 2 of these with some Grim Baubles. I was able to Grim Bauble, Surveil, play Dune Drifter, get Grim Bauble back, ping something else, surveil again, put something else into the graveyard. It was a really nice synergistic way of being able to do that while still getting some value on the battlefield and recurring some of my removal. So something to keep a look at. X can be 1 if you need it to be, or it can be bigger. I've played this late and been able to get back a 4 or 5 mana creature, which feels really impactful as well. Imagine being able to pull something like a Detention Chariot out late in the game when you need some removal or a way to pull something that is in the way, out of the way, can be really, really good. So one to keep an eye on that I have personally really enjoyed, and I think in the right shell can be really, really good. If I did not mention Haunt the Network, I'd probably get yelled at in the comments. If you are doing the blue-black artifact thing with Packed Owl Terrors, play this card. Play this card. Like, absolutely play this card. 100% of the time, play this card. It's fantastic if you have a couple of artifacts out. 5 mana, you should have hopefully at least a few if you can build the deck that way. Blue, black, and I've also had really good success with Esper here, blue, black, and white. Putting this into the build and having some really impactful turns. This with some Packed Owl Terrors and a couple other artifacts is a huge, huge life point swing. In addition to a couple of good Thopters that can help to punch in some damage or crew up some vehicles that you might have on the battlefield. So this card's fantastic. keep an eye out for it. It might even be, this card is definitely one of the few that I would say is worth a splash into another color if you have the other supporting items around it. So something to consider. I really like Thundering Broodwagon. Seems expensive. 6 mana is a lot. If you can cheat this into play, it's really, really good. And Broadside Barrage. If you are doing the blue and red cycling and discarding, this is just a fantastic spell. 5 damage, gets through quite a bit of the toughness of creatures at instant speed, is great, and then helps you to do your whole draw discard thing, which is absolutely what these colors want to do. So keep an eye out for this one as well. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to mention here for uncommons is Pit Automaton. This is actually a very, very high pick rate card, and a very, very successful card at that for your colorless picks. 2 mana, 0/4 defender, 4, again, being really, really critical. Very hard for a lot of creatures in battle to get through this without spending some additional resources, so that is something to consider. You can spend 2 mana to activate some exhaust abilities, and if you're going to do that, you can actually get double the value late in the game by being able to copy one of those exhaust abilities, as long as it's not a mana ability. So be careful with your loot, the Pathfinders out there. Great card, really good. If you're going to do the exhaust thing and you have 1 or 2 of these in your pool, you probably want to look at throwing 1 in. Mostly just 2 because, again, it's a great body. So early on, it can help to pump you up. And again, it can help you to do those exhaust abilities, especially on defense, is also something to note, right? Being able to block. If somebody doesn't see a good, the pathway, or maybe they miss this card, they might attack into one of your exhaust creatures, not realizing it. You could throw this into block and then also exhaust by tapping it, getting that 2 additional mana. So be a little tricky with this card. And if you find a way to do that, you can have some pretty good success. Okay, I'm not going to spend quite as much time here on the commons, but a couple that I do want to just throw out there that I have enjoyed. Collision Course in white, great. I've talked about how impactful interaction can be. Collision Course is awesome for the main reason that for 2 mana, you can destroy an artifact. That can be pretty impactful. Again, if you're doing the creature or vehicle thing, this gets much, much better, but this is a pretty solid removal spell as well. It is sorcery speed, so that is a little bit of a drawback, but definitely something that you have access to. And each color feels like, for the most part, it has some pretty good options to get rid of artifacts. White, green, certainly excelling in that. Red does a good job as well, but this is one of the better spells, I would say. If you're doing the mount thing, Interface Ace, put it into your deck. You will not regret it. I can absolutely say that with certainty as well. And then Ride's End, you play this card every time. Don't ever skip it. It's fantastic. It does all the things that you want it to do. It's also important to note that this is an exile spell, and there are quite a few, especially very big, indestructible gods out there, right? This can be one of the few very, very solid answers. So if you have a good white pool, good sealed pool in white here, and you have a couple of Ride's Ends, you're going to be doing quite all right, and not be sad that you have this card at all. Okay, there are two, maybe 3, a couple blue cards to take a look at. Flood the Engine is performing fantastically, absolutely fantastic. A lot of the reason for this is the fact that it causes the permanent that it enchants either the creature or the vehicle to lose all of its abilities, in addition to not untapping. The losing all of the abilities things can be very, very good. Exhaust abilities, other mana sinks, even some triggers or some combat type stuff that might occur. Flood the Engine completely shuts it down. Absolutely, if you're going to be in blue, you should be looking for this card, and this is an easy slot into the deck. The other one that is performing very, very well here is Nimble Thopterist, and really just because you're getting some solid value, and a lot of times in blue, again, pretty much every deck's going to probably play some amount of vehicles. This just little 1/1 flying Thopter can be pretty. Blue in this set specifically excels at, as it usually does with flying, but it feels like there's a lot of very, very good flying creature options being able to make a little flyer in addition to a 3/2 body is pretty good. So something to keep an eye out for, and definitely a good creature you might want to consider dropping into your deck if you end up being in blue. Okay, let's talk black here really quick. Engine Rat, just leading the way. We talked about mana sinks. We talked a lot about the opportunities that you have and how grindy these games can get. This is a really good mana sink late in the game. Now, there's obviously some good synergies with green-black and some of the fight spells that you can do with this, or the dealing damage spells. One of the few creatures that has Death Touch in this format, which is really interesting. But I want to also note that for 6 mana, you're causing your opponent to lose 2 life. And that can be pretty impactful over the course of a game. If a board state is locked up, which I have had a lot more of in this format than previous formats, this is something that can help you to punch through and be a good place to put some mana, as well as just hard to attack through, right? You almost have to take care of this if you don't want to lose one of your big impactful creatures if you're attacking. So something to consider. Definitely be playing your Engine Rats. Grim Bobble, love this card. Definitely play it. Really, really good. One of the other ones performing extremely high, Wreckage Wickerfolk. The fact that you get to surveil 2 off of this, so fantastic. Good body, 1/3. Also fits the other bill. Artifact creatures in this format have so much good synergy, something to keep in mind. Now, the other thing, though, is just be careful. Artifact creatures are also a little bit more susceptible to the artifact removal that otherwise might not impact just a regular creature. So keep that in mind. You have a little bit of a trade-off there. Something like we talked about with Collision Course here. You might not have the creatures to be able to deal with this, but being able to target an artifact creature is something that you might be able to do. So Wreckage Wickerfolk definitely at the top of the list for impactful commons here. I personally really also enjoy Maximum Overdrive. I think this helps you, especially if you're trying to do like the speed thing, or you're really just trying to have a good combat. This can be really nice because it gives not only Death Touch, but Indestructible, right? That can be really, really good. Great defensive spell, can also be a great offensive spell if you're looking for some good combat tricks over the course of your game. Spin Out. Play it if you're going to go into black, okay? And then Pact Altera has also been performing really, really good. Even if you have just one of these and can get a couple of triggers off of this, the 2-point life swing, the ability to gain some life is really good. And then again, what are you getting here? You're getting a 3 power, but 4 toughness creature that can be a little bit hard to get off the battlefield. So definitely keep an eye out for this. If you have 2 of these in your sealed pool and you have some other good supporting cards in the color black, you should consider probably giving that a go, and you might not be too upset. Okay, red is usually pretty easy, as you would expect, and that's because it has cards like Lightning Strike. Very, very good. Absolutely talked enough about removal. Endrider Catalyzer is actually up there pretty high as well. 2 mana, 3/1, starting your engines. I don't think you're going to do a ton with max speed getting the mana here. Maybe you are, but in many instances, you're probably not. This is just a great card to get your speed going, potentially punch in some damage, or otherwise do a good trade early on for another creature and move on with your engine started as well. So that is one of the better performing commons in red. Crash and Burn also doing extremely well. And then Thunderhead Gunner is actually the top red common right now here for sealed for Aetherdrift. And a lot of this is you can discard and draw a card. You can activate this once a turn. This having reach and being a 4/5, very, very difficult to get off the battlefield for many different decks, and is definitely what you're looking for, right? And especially late game, this is very impactful, being able to cycle through some lands and things like that, and is a very hard creature to attack through. So you see some Thunderhead Gunners in your pool, probably want to play them. Okay, we could talk about, I don't know, like 10 cards in green that are just performing fantastic. A lot of that has to do with how impactful green is. I personally really, really like Scurryfoot. 1 mana, 1/1, pay 4, get a 3/3, do the exhaust thing. You're not going to be sad having these in your deck, and probably quite a few of them. If you see 2 or 3, probably want to just about play all of those. Run Over, a great removal spell, so something to consider. Venomous Lagak, another one of the Death Touch creatures. This works out really nicely in green, again, with so many of the different fight spells that you potentially have options for. So something to keep a look at. Migrating Ketradon is just the absolute stabilizer of stabilizers. So play this card, okay? If you see one or two of them, play these, because if you get behind in a board, you're going to play this 6/6. It's going to be really hard to get rid of. You're going to gain 4 life, and you're probably going to stabilize by playing this, unless it's almost immediately removed. So you should do that. Oh, and it has reach, so they can't fly over it. This is a really good card. You should play it. And then Hazard of the Dunes. Very, very fantastic. One that has performed okay, but maybe not should be a ton. Maybe 1 copy makes sense. Definitely be careful with multiple copies here of Broken Wings. And this is certainly dependent on the matchups. However, with it being a best of 1 format in this sealed Arena Direct, you do want to be really careful with this. If it's your only removal spell option, you probably won't be sad to see this most of the time. This can get rid of it enchantments, so that is something to note. That is quite good, especially if you're coming up against somebody playing blue. But other than that, just be careful with these. Good removal spell, but be careful how many you play is the only thing I would tell you, because there are going to be times where this is absolutely dead in your hand, where other removal spells that can destroy artifacts or take care of just creatures cleanly is not going to be the case. But I guess you could say that about a lot of removal spells. So do as you please. That's just my experience. Okay, last couple of mentions here. Obviously, you have your suite of lands. Use those as you see fit. Great ways to fix your mana, or if you're going to jump into a splash, this can be really, really helpful for you. Scrap Compactor, interestingly enough, is the highest rated artifact or colorless card outside of a handful of lands here for commons for sealed Aetherdrift. I've played this. It's been pretty good. I like the fact that it's a 1 mana play, so if you catch this in your opener, folks have to kind of be a little considerate. The fact that for 3 at any point, if you keep that mana open, can throw some damage. 6 to be able to sacrifice and destroy a target creature or vehicle. Can also be late game very good if this is on the battlefield. I would tell you, if you're doing the anything that cares about artifacts, if you're playing white, if you're playing black, and you need triggers, especially for something like a Pactile Terror, do consider this as a good removal spell to also get a little bit of value as well. That's where I've had the most success with this card in particular, and it can be pretty good. It's also ranked pretty high, interestingly, or again, the highest outside of a handful of lands, like pretty cleanly. The other one that's doing really, really well is Camera Launcher. The fact that you can exhaust this for 3, making it a 3/3 and creating a 1/1, pretty good value overall. So again, if you care about the artifact thing, or you need some cheap things to help you crew some stuff, the Thopters can get it done. This can also make, just for a good blockers, right? Some good chump blocking, not bad as well. I also personally have really enjoyed Aether Jacket. The fact that this thing has vigilance, it can only destroy another target artifact and do it at sorcery speed. But on your turn, you're going to get the opportunity, if your flying lane is clear, you're going to be able to punch in for 2. You're then going to be able to use 2 mana sack, destroy an impactful artifact or a vehicle that is giving you some trouble. This has been quite good, and something that I think people have to really respect in terms of it being on the battlefield and then playing something of a higher mana value, right? You're going to end up investing 5 mana, which isn't nothing, but you're getting a creature out of it with vigilance that can block, that can attack, do what you need to do. And so if they're playing a 6 mana, for instance, or even a 5 mana vehicle, they have to be a little considerate of the fact that for 2 mana, you can just rip it off the battlefield. So I enjoy this. I wouldn't play a ton of these, but one of these in the deck, probably something that you may want to consider as well. And then you have some great fixing with Night Market. Play this if you're splashing, or you just want to help to fix your colors. That can be pretty good for you as well. All right, that's what I've got for you. A little bit of stats from 17 lands, a little bit of my personal experience. I hope you get the opportunity, if you want, to jump in, have some fun. This is, again, a very high variance, a very, very difficult thing to do. But if you are well prepared, hopefully you can draw well, build a good deck, have some fun playing some games, and hopefully you could be walking away with a 6-win victory and some collector boosters. So we're going to be picking up some gems here. I'm telling you, we're going to give this quite a few goes. So if you're watching this video this week, check back in with us next week to see how we did. Hopefully we have a couple of videos up that are showcasing some wins and some good sealed decks, and some collector boosters will hopefully be on their way to us here relatively soon. Thanks for checking this out. If you enjoyed the content, we're stepping more into these types of videos. If you enjoyed the content, please let me know down in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. If there's a couple of cards that have caught your eye that have performed really, really well, please let me know as well. Hope to make this a good community video to take some good things away from. In addition to all of that, I'm going to flash some socials, help support the channel. Hit that subscribe button for me. It would really, really help out. Trying to get to our first channel milestone of 1,000 subscribers, so we'd appreciate your support. If you enjoy MTG Arena content, we do a lot of it throughout the week, usually about 4 videos a week between draft and sealed. So we love our limited action. In addition to that, if you like pack cracking action, we do that as well. We do those videos every Wednesday. We've got a good queue up. If you're watching this, we're jumping into both Aetherdrift and Innistrad remastered. So we're swapping some different videos around, and we have a good queue up ready to go. We've got some awesome openings for both of those products. So if you want to see us rip some packs, you can tune in with us every Wednesday. And we have playlists for both MTG Arena and our pack opening content. So go ahead, roll over to the old profile, take a look at playlists if you want to go and peruse some videos for some recent stuff as well. Thanks again, as always, for clicking on the video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully you found a few tidbits to help you out this weekend. And best of luck in the Aetherdrift Arena Direct.